Why we play games. The reason we play games is to have fun. Now we get into the hard questions. How do you play games? So, does anyone know this game? This is Tennis for Two. It was the first ever video game created by William Higginbottom back in 1956, I believe. Shortly after World War II, the game was programmed on a computer designed to launch nuclear missiles.
Just playing some tennis when you accidentally
I mean, it's you laugh, but the arcs are missile trajectories. And you just put a little dot on it, you add a little fence, and the computer says you're playing tennis. Now, it doesn't have a way to keep score, right? Because it's the first ever video game. But you and someone else can sit down with the computer and play some table tennis. So, why has this been designed the way it has? Well, because it was very basic. But now let's talk about how. How do we design games? How do we build games? How do we play games?
Make your environment. Make your, like...
You are 30 leagues ahead.
Dang.
So, let's start with how do we play games?
With the controller.
With a controller. Good answer.
Button mapping.
with your hand.
With your hand.
Or your eyes.
With your feet. With your eyes. All right, I'm going to swap over to Photoshop for a second. Chances are you play video games like this, sitting on a couch with a controller in hand, some console in between you and a television or a monitor. If this is how you play games, chances are that the character that you are playing, well, is in a world on the inside of the little computer. Does anyone not agree with this? This is how most games nowadays function. Great. So you're the player, you're playing a character, and chances are that you observe the gameplay. I hope you look at the game while you play it, but sometimes you don't, right? You're just in a bus playing Sudoku, and you're not really paying much attention to what the game is like. But I want you to do this. I want you to watch what is going on as you're playing. Because if you watch what's going on at the character and world level, you will start to pick up the nitty-gritty of how the game actually works. Now, in a dream scenario, right, the ideal way for you as game designers to play games is from a third-person perspective, where you also watch yourself play the game. Yes. I want you to think about yourself as you're playing the game. So when I ask you how you play games, the answer can be with a controller, with my eyes, with my feet, with a gamepad, whatever. But I want you to make that decision and ask yourself, why am I playing the game this way? Great. So what do I mean by this? Well, how many of you play games like this? Good. You've got several raised hands, but let me be honest. Do any of you actually play a game like this? Or do you do this? Do you go gamer mode?
It depends on the game.
Yeah.
If
It depends on the game.
If it's peaceful Minecraft, sit up straight. Have a nice time. You're about to die.
You go gamer mode. The other thing is like fully sat back in the chair, leaned back, having the time of your life, versus gamer mode. And then you have like the mega slouch, right? Where you just lean all the way back while you're gaming. It's important to pay attention to how you're playing the game. How does a game make you feel physically, right? Angry. So if a game makes you feel angry, but we play games to have fun, what does that tell us?
Right.
The boss of fighting is too difficult. And
Good
they want
answer.
to throw a chair.
Good answer. Challenge is a part of play. Sometimes doing the same thing gets too easy, and as someone mentioned very early on in the semester, doing the easy thing is boring, so let's do it the hard way. Let's put it on extreme difficulty and try not to die. Moving on. What button is jump?
A or space bar.
A or space bar?
Or X.
Does anyone not agree? X is a good answer.
Let's say X.
It depends on the game.
It depends on the game. Congratulations, Leighton. You get the solid gold Cupid doll. Everyone else fails because jump is actually a completely different physics interaction where the button doesn't exist and it's entirely controlled by the mouse.
Not getting over it.
Oh God.
What about I Am Bread?
Another wonderful example. Fadian games, your quaps, your I am bread, you're getting over it. Break what we call bias. Everyone goes into a game expecting it to be like every other game. Who here has gamer sense? Gamer sense is when you load into a fresh new game, but the game has Mario in the title. So you go in knowing, oh, A is jump, there's coins around, there's power-ups, and I need to reach the end of the level, right?
Yeah.
Gamer sense is loading into Breath of the Wild, knowing all of the story and being like, there's probably crates around here that I can break for loot, right? That's all gamer sense, that's all bias. When you go into a new game, throw it all out the window. Pretend you're playing the game from scratch. You're a 2-year-old holding a weird plastic thing, okay? And you need to play a game. Now, everyone that answered that A is jump,
Guitar Hero.
there's a lot of different A buttons. There's a lot of different games. A is traditional, right? But you can always change what your layout is. Spacebar, very traditional, but most keyboards, most gaming keyboards will have WASD or arrow keys selected as the default. Let's make these colors stand out so that gamers know where to find them. Same thing with mice. Mice usually have 2 buttons and maybe a mouse wheel nowadays, but we also have gamer mice with silly little numpads where your thumb is. If you're playing a very specialized game, Guitar Hero, you will have a guitar-shaped controller. Who knew? But you can also play Mario with a Guitar Hero controller. I wouldn't suggest it, but there are people that do that. If you play fighting games, you probably have a little joystick with a bunch of buttons on it. Or if you play Smash, you probably have a GameCube controller. There's lots of different ways to play games, and it's always important to think, what are the usual conventions when I'm building my game? If I tell you to program a game like Mario, and you map jump to F, I will take points off. If I tell you to program a game like Quap, and you program jump to F, I'll be like, yeah, all right, thanks, good joke. So, moving on. What is the first thing you see in most games? The user interface, the main menu.
The title.
When you load into the game, after you're done considering how you're going to play it, look through the user interface. If your user interface has all of your little equipment items things, or if it doesn't have an inventory, find something similar, but for the basic metaphor. If your inventory has it all perfectly laid out in neat little sections with buttons telling you what every different type of inventory thing is, and it gives you different menus for where those inventory slots are, and then it shows you what you have equipped, chances are your inventory actually doesn't matter that much. Because you can carry as much as you bloody want, right? But every single item has a category so that you know where it goes. So the individual items matter, but your inventory overall does not. On the other hand, if you have something like Neverwinter Nights, your Skyrims, your Baldur's Gates, your inventory might not be quite so organized, and instead, objects take up space in a physical inventory. This says, the inventory, you need to manage it. You can't carry 80 billion things, and everything you have matters. Yes, questions?
Nothing, I was just saying, you said 8 billion things, and I was just thinking cheese whiz.
80 billion things versus maybe at max 64. That's user interface. That's an actual game tool. Now, outside of the game itself, let's go back to menus. If you're playing a very simple, very dramatic, very storytelling game like Hollow Knight, your menus are probably very basic because they've curated an experience for you to play through, and they want you to have some control over what's going on, but broadly speaking, no. On the other hand, if you're playing a highly competitive game like Dota 2, your options menu is extremely detailed. They don't expect every player to go in here and mess with every single value, but they will give everyone the same control over their experience, right? Every single thing about the game, you can change it so that it matches up to what you like. This is very, quote unquote, casual. That is very much an advanced UI. I don't expect anyone to build something like that. I don't expect anyone to build something like this because we won't really be going too much into UI. We'll be having some widget interaction, but realistically, don't overcomplicate your menus. And if you play games, remember your discussion is to play 5 games, go into the menus and figure out why they're built the way they are. Good. The next thing you check when you're playing a game are for your first order optimal strategies, or your noob strats, or your Foo Fighters, if you want a little anagram. So, who here has ever played a game from scratch as a noob? The answer should be all of you, because you've all been a beginner at some point. When you are a beginner in a game, what do?
You just find the cool stuff.
Find out how to do things. Do the first thing that comes to mind. Find the easiest way to play the game. New players don't have skills.
They have luck.
They have luck, and they have bias.
I know there's actually a pretty decent strategy in the original Halo called the noob strat. That's literally just the plasma pistol
Yup.
and the OG Magnum.
And every game has a noob strat. Yes, like,
I started playing fighting games in March for the first time, really, not counting Smash.
This year?
Yes. And I must say, I went online, I looked, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna see what's cool, and I'm gonna learn it. And that's what I did.
if you don't know how to play the game, you go find people that know how to play the game and then you just copy them.
Agreed.
Yep.
That is very common.
Valid.
Because professionals will find the quote-unquote best way to play the game.
And back to
Noobs will find the easiest way to play the game. So, if you're a professional, you have a large amount of
Time.
Skill.
time is variable, but skill was a good answer. Experience was another good answer. If you are a professional, you have a large amount of skill and experience, and that becomes a output for power in the game. If you are a noob, you are looking for the option that gives you the least amount of skill for the most amount of power, right? Low cost, high output. So when you start playing your game, always try and find the dumb way of doing it. Once you've played it for a couple hours, then think a little bit more critically about how you're going to go about it. Now, let's go back to Dota 2 for a second. Breaks and overload. If you are doing the simple thing all the time, as a game designer, your solution to my player keeps doing the easy thing is to increase the difficulty so the easy thing doesn't work, right? Break them out of that pattern. On the other hand, if you give them too many options, things will break. So let's look at Dota 2's hotkeys. If you are a new player, chances are you've only ever seen this menu. You've got 5, maybe 6 buttons, depending on how you choose to play the game, and you've got a bunch of other little buttons. But you've got those big 6. And if you are a noob, you're going to use those big 6 buttons. Once you get good at the game, objectively, you will start to learn the other buttons, you will learn that pros use the other buttons, and you will play with those buttons. And then, once you've become even better at the game, you'll start playing with the advanced hotkeys. And at that point, you are out of the noob pool. But, as you introduce more mechanics to your playthrough, your performance will drop, because you've added new things to your skill set, and that means that in order to master those skills, your overall performance will drop. Then once you've mastered them, it'll go back up. Then you'll add more things to your skill set and it'll go back down. Then you'll go back up, you'll add new things, and so on and so forth. But overall, you'll get an upwards trend. This applies for every other game in existence. Can anyone think of a couple of examples?
Fighting games. Usually when you first start out, like the arcade in Mortal Kombat, whenever you first start out, it's simple, it's a little bit easier. As you go through the tiers, it gets harder and harder, and you fight pretty much God.
Fighting games is a great example. Anyone that has ever played Street Fighter?
Yes.
Anyone that has ever played E-Honda? Anyone that has ever just 1,000 palm strike the opponent? It's a combo where you just mash A. It's a noob strat, it's easy, but once it breaks, you start adding more things to your skill set, and then you realize E-Honda sucks because his only strat is the noob strat, and then you go play other characters, your performance drops, and then once you get good at those, you climb again. Good. Other examples.
Bayonetta.
Bayonetta. Whew.
Oh,
What a character. Yeah. All right. So I assume you mean Bayonetta in Smash, or do you mean Bayonetta the game?
Both.
Okay. Well, I don't know too much about Bayonetta the game.
Kirby.
Kirby's a good answer.
Nothing special.
Kirby is the beginner character in Smash.
Hey, I love Kirby.
Bayonetta has a very high skill ceiling, where if you know how to play Bayonetta, you win. But if you don't know how to play Bayonetta, you don't.
I feel like a really good example of that is Oscar.
I wrecked the.
Now what about outside of fighting games?
I first played Kirby.
Doom Eternal. You get new weapons which completely change the way you play.
Doom Eternal, new weapons. Every time you drop a new weapon for a character in any game, they will take about 10 minutes to figure out how it works, about 10 minutes dying to the grenade they shot themselves with, and then they'll start playing the game again. Before I call on you, what about Minecraft?
That's what I was gonna say.
No!
What's the noob strat in Minecraft?
Dig a hole in the ground.
Dig a hole in the ground. Punch a tree, dig a hole, surround yourself in dirt, wait until daytime. But then once you get good at Minecraft,
Well, then you have to go to the Nether, and the mobs in the Nether are different from the mobs in the overworld.
Yeah.
So then you have a new, like,
a new noob experience.
And then you have to go to the end. There's a dragon, and there's a bunch of Endermen. It's different than just like
Spoilers.
If you are getting spoilers, it's fine.
Just beat it.
No, you spoiled Minecraft. Pokemon.
Pokemon. I'm sorry, I'm deaf. Pokemon has noob strats and pro strats, and that is a very true thing, because Pokemon is a skill-based game, but it's also a crit-based game. It's also a status-based game. If you are a Thunderwave Confusion Ray spammer, oh my days. But
Wait, you mean people use moves that don't directly deal damage?
who has ever played a Pokemon game and their first instinct when doing so is to delete any move that buffs or lowers stats because they don't do damage?
That is how I play Pokemon to this day.
I
personally in the middle of a
personally-
Soul Silver playthrough. That is just how I play Pokemon.
Those are all noob strats.
You get on him. Bonk.
I also just do not care about type overlaps when it comes to Pokemon.
But here's another question: does Pokemon ever suffer from overload? Can anyone tell me the stats of all 1,071 Pokemon?
Mew has 100 across all the stats. There was Eternamax,
The Pro.
like 1,100 base stat total. That was just, you can't use it, but it has a ridiculous base stat total.
If a noob tries to break into the professional Pokemon scene, there are countless combinations to consider because there are over 1,000 Pokemon, over 1,000 moves, over 1,000 items, right? And they all combine into a game of chance. Pokemon is advanced gambling. Heard it here first.
Plants vs. Zombies.
Plants vs. Zombies.
I don't think you've ever played NVM in TF2.
No.
TF2.
TF2. Whew, soldier.
Sold.
No.
Yeah.
Plants vs. Zombies, a great example. Just set up pea shooters, but then eventually, pea shooters suck. Let's use different things. Let's switch to catapults. And then once you switch to melons, it's all over. You never go back until you realize that melons are incredibly slow, and then you switch back to pea shooters.
Are they potatoes or walnuts?
I believe they're nuts.
I can
So,
never remember.
that's breaks and overload. Now, I believe that takes us to bugs. Who here has ever encountered a bug in a game?
I go out of my way to find them.
Good answer. Yes. A lot of players will, after they've gotten good at the game, start hunting for what are the ways that actually physically break the game. Note that bugs are a form of game break that is not intentional. This is stuff we build into the game to force players to play a different way. This is when your game explodes. Bugs include examples.
I think wave dashing in Smash Brothers Melee.
Wave dashing
That's a glitch.
in Smash Bros. Melee, yes. Soft locks in game. If you get soft locked in a game, it sucks. If you get hard locked in a game, it sucks more. Yes, in the back.
That duplication glitch.
Duplication glitches in every game with an inventory system ever created. Yes.
I got sent another map in Doom Eternal once out of nowhere. I was just walking and got sent down 1,000 miles an hour.
Map breaking, very common.
Even Smash Bros.
Steve has bugs everywhere. So, every time you add in one of these, chances are you'll break the game. Has anyone ever heard of Sonic 06?
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, no.
Has it?
I've heard rumors.
Let's
make it better.
let's do a quick slideshow of Sonic 06. Knuckles.
Oh boy, Sonic 06.
this is Sonic
This is the
06.
game,
Let's
if I
see
should
if
even
I
call it
can
that,
find
that crippled the Sonic franchise.
Knuckles.
But what made this game worse than
Knuckles.
fly along the rocks holding forward until you go
that's
into it,
Tails.
and come out
So
the
yep,
other
here we are,
side.
breaking out
Now you
of
can just
bounds.
fly over to the goal
Gotta love
ring, and
Tails.
Tails wins.
Where
Later on, Sonic and his amigos get together,
are
but
you Knuckles?
only go
Oh,
back in
you're
the
Knuckles,
level.
aren't you?
It's also only done
Yeah,
in one
let's
part of
do
the
it.
level, so it's not too
Please
useful.
do the thing.
With that said,
There's
go
the
up to a
infinite
door
flip.
and glide into its corner
Are they
between the
gonna
wall.
flip out of bounds?
If you glide at an angle that's about 45
Oh,
degrees,
shit.
eventually Knuckles will attach to the
Oh my
wall.
God, shows either one. Oh, there we
If you
go.
move to the left, you
Oh,
should go through the door.
oh,
Or
oh.
the screen.
We're going there. All right. So yeah, there are games that break. There are mechanics that break games.
Sonic
Uh,
Boom and Knuckles glitch.
Sonic 06 and Sonic Boom historically have glitches where if you pause the game just resets to its default state and you can input things infinitely.
Yep.
Always make sure that when your character is in a menu that they can't do anything else.
Well, I mean, Minecraft, whenever you pause, the game still continues.
Right, but whenever you open the inventory, can you still walk around?
No.
Whenever you're in a menu,
I think with
make sure that you can interact with the rest of the world.
People can make you.
I'm pretty sure in single player, everything pauses in Minecraft.
Yeah.
If you hit the pause button, but multiplayer is where.
There are several different ways of implementing pauses and breaks to prevent your character from interacting with the world. All of them are valid. All of them have benefits and faults. I personally hate that you can't pause multiplayer games.
Oh, broken saves.
I think several people would hate that if you could pause a multiplayer.
It depends on the game that it is. It depends
It
on
would be
what
funny
type
if
of multiplayer.
you could play like an online multiplayer game, and then if you got like pause it in
Pause.
the bathroom,
Just
it
the
just
whole WoW
freezes
server
the
takes
entire
a break.
server.
I said
Oh,
broken or corrupted saves.
Broken and corrupted saves occasionally break the games. Yes, this is very true. It's very easy to corrupt a saving throw. Has anyone ever seen a Pokemon Blue speedrun?
Yes.
For those of you that have not seen a Pokemon Blue speedrun, it's about 6 minutes.
They also did it with Breath of the Wild. A very, very short speedrun.
Or is it 13? I forget. Okay, so yes.
Today
this
we're
is a
speedrunning through
video about
Pokemon
6
Blue,
minute
which is going to be a
speedrun.
lot more
I don't
broken than
want
you
to
might
watch
think.
all
And we're
of
going to
it.
start
But I'll
that
skip through
brokenness
it just so that
before
you
we
can
even
see
start the speedrun.
sort of what
Let's
ends
go
up
by them
happening.
while hopefully
So we
not
start
messing
by
it up.
naming our
This is the
character
result,
Nadine
and
here.
yeah, my mom probably hates me. But after that,
And then you
Oak is going to
name
ask
your
what his
opponent.
grandson's name is because he's definitely a good person, which we can just thankfully
Well,
use the
now
preset
that
of
you're
red
in the
and
menu,
start our journey.
you start
But
playing
before
the
we
game,
win or
you
lose,
get a squirrel.
Vault losing is
You get a
slightly
card.
faster since we don't have to wait for
You
the
keep
promise.
going through the
But for
game
now,
until you
we take the
enter
path that generally
the
avoids
map.
tall grass and get
And
no
it's around
Pokemon
the
on the way
point
back.
where
Then after
you start
delivering the
getting
package,
inventory
Oak
stuff.
decides to give us a
Things start
Pokedex
glitching around.
before sending us out to finally break the entire game in
This
half.
is
Oh yeah, I
fun.
also stand
The
next
reason
to
this
Professor
happens
Oak
is
instead of in front of him,
because
so Red
Pokemon
has
for
less area to walk,
Pokemon.
which saves a little time. Now we make our way back to Viridian City with the same path as before,
when you are
and luckily
programming
got
on
one more
very
encounter,
low
but
intelligence
2 total
systems,
isn't too bad. Then we make
you
our way
have
over
the
to the
same fish where
Pokemart
possible,
and buy a single
so you start,
Pokeball because it's time to do some
making
manips.
things
Now how
in the
Generation
inventory
1
now,
Pokemon
you
encounters
can
work
just
is if we
interact with
reset the
change.
game and frame perfectly take the same
That
path,
leads to
we should always
fun
get the
little
exact same
rewards.
encounter.
Let's see if I
This is
can find
because the
menu
RNG changes every frame, but it's not actually completely random. So we save and hard reset on this tile, which is basically turning the console on and off. So while this is going on, I just want to say, if you want to learn more about the explanation ways after, but there actually is a 25% chance of this warp failing and the game crashing, which actually happened to me, and to enjoy the game showing off our level 7 Spearow and saying that we really need to catch more Pokemon because our trainer rating is kind of pathetic. But whatever, I'm the champion and definitely didn't do anything illegal at all. Now this run is going to tie us for 9
amount of time, focus their time on. Once you have passed the realm of professional, or sometimes you skip the realm of professional because you think the professional scene sucks. Instead, I just want to play the game the way I want to play it, and that is, let's break it, let's find the fastest way to do it. Because how we play games, let's go back to the how slide. How we play games is entirely different from person to person. Some people will play a game all the way through. Some people will play a game for 3 hours. And then never finish it. And some people will get different levels of fun out of it. Will get different levels of enjoyment. Some people will hate playing StarCraft. They'll get through 2 missions and then stop. It all depends. How you play games matters, and I don't expect any of you to actually play a game all the way through this weekend for your little discussion post. I expect that most of you will probably open up a game, play it for half an hour, maybe an hour, learn something about it, and write that down. Is that all right? That's how you play games. That's how you play games as a game designer. Don't actually finish a game. Just take into account all of the things that make the game what it is. If you start playing a game halfway through, right, you've already played half the game, and you just jump in the middle, take into account what it took for you to get there. And then take into account how much progress you make within however long you play.
And then when I start a new save to take that.
Well, some games,
Yeah.
if you start a new save in Pokemon, more power to you. Right? Games are all different. That's all I wanted to say. That's how I want you to think about how you play games.
I wish games kept the standard of having multiple save files that you can have instead of just one.
It depends on the game. It all depends on game design. So why do some games have multiple save files when others don't? Any ideas?
Multiple people can play the
Physical storage space is a good answer. Multiple people is a good answer.
To avoid save scumming?
To avoid save scumming is a very good answer.
Like the old Zelda games, like on the Game Boy Advance, they had multiple save files. Like the Minish Cap, they had like 3. But with Breath of the Wild, there's only 1.
Yep. Well, yeah.
On like the one account, there's 1, and there's Master Mode.
What about Mario Odyssey?
I'm pretty sure you can choose to create a new save file every time you save.
You can choose to create a new save file every time you save, and there's like 20 or something, max. Different quantities of different save files. Different games use them differently and store them differently. Sometimes it is a physical storage requirement. Sometimes it's to prevent save scumming. Sometimes it's because you're only supposed to play the game once. Some games are so long and lengthy and story-driven that they really only want you to play it through it once. And then after you're done playing through it, if you go and play it more than once, that's on you. The game developer's done their job. They've told the story they wanted to tell. And if you go back and play it 3 more times, trying to see if you can get a faster time, a better way of doing it, break it, that's all on you. And all of that is taken into account by us, by the game developers. Several games are developed with things like speedrun in mind. Because that's just a thing that happens nowadays. People will pick up games and speedrun them. That's why a lot of games have internal timers nowadays. Some games do not. Some games have speedrun mode, where they cut out load times, they cut out the timer changing during scene transitions. Some games don't. It all depends on who you want to play the game, who your target audience is, and how you want to deliver the story you're trying to get. Yes?
I was going to say there's also games without saves.
There are games with no saving. This is true.
The very first Kirby game, no saves.
No saves. It all depends. There's also games with what I like to call far too many saves. Roguelikes. Every game that you've played in a roguelike, every run that you've played, is saved. Not that you can go back and play it, but it's saved in the sense that it provides progress to the next couple hundred rounds you play. And each one of those versions of the game you've played compounds on itself. And if you actually go into the game's files, you can go and resurrect old saves. It just kind of sucks. It all depends. It all depends on what sort of games you want to make as a game designer. When I ask you what sorts of games are there, you gave a bunch of answers of very specific games. On a broader sense, you've got puzzle games, you've got idle games,
I love those so much.
you've got strategy games, you've got 4X games, you've got FPSs, you've got sports games, right? Board games, card games, collectibles, all sorts of games. It's important to think about, as a game designer, if you want to go into game design. Sorry to all the people that don't want to go into game design. If you want to go into game design, consider why you're designing your games. Are you designing games for yourself? Are you designing games that I want to play? Me, you? Or are you designing games to tell a story that you want to share with others? Or are you just designing Cookie Clicker because it's fun? If you're designing a pure fun game, hallelujah. Yes, in the neck.
Well, when you brought up how some games they're designed to just be played once, I think that's kind of bad design. Because to me, it's like, if you're gonna have people spend like $60 to get a game that they're only gonna play once, like, you better make